Hello everybody, it's Glass Half Dead here, and today I'm going to go over a whole bunch, it's this side isn't it, a whole bunch of beginner rosters. You know, I'm seeing a lot of questions on Facebook, Reddit, my Discord saying, I'm thinking about getting this faction, what should I run? And I've decided to just stop that problem completely, just going to stop it in its tracks. Now, quick note, I am doing this very specifically for 125 point lists. Obviously, if you want to just drop that to 100, just take out 25 points. Relatively simple. I'm not saying that all of these lists are going to be the top tier, ultra refined tournament list. However, some of them are, actually. And some of them I started making because I just wanted to do it for myself. And so those I've put a little bit more thought into and actually play tested. Some of the others are just kind of general knowledge that I've accumulated and I've thrown together a list for. Although I think I have actually played every faction at one point, so it's not, you know, they're accurate. They are going to be a great, hopefully very helpful for the community guide into what to buy. Check the top comment or the description, because what I have done there is left not only a timestamp per faction, and I have done every faction except Custodes, but I have also left a link to the actual roster itself, so you don't have to watch the video, you could just click on the link. Other minor note, you will notice that all of these rosters are titled faction name 125, that's the point, LGT. That's because the LGT is the tournament that I am going to be running in London in June 27th, 28th. Tickets are finally on sale. That link is also in the description and the top comment. Be awesome to see you guys there. However, due to the weirdness of YouTube, the way YouTube algorithms work is that when you click on that link to take you out of the YouTube site to look at the datasheet, the roster, what's going to happen is it's going to say people are leaving the site because of your video, which is really bad for my channel. If you could counteract that by dropping a comment, leaving a like, that would be really, really helpful. Also, I have a Patreon and a Discord. There are links in the description. Check it out. It's a fun community. We talk about, you know, Kill Team. That's about it. What can I say? Now, a very quick note about how this works. I am using the Excel spreadsheet originally posted on Reddit by a user called Missing One Leg. I use this spreadsheet all the time to make all of my lists. I also use mathhammer8ed.com. Brilliant. I also use the app for that, but I'll get into that another time. This Excel spreadsheet is great. There are drop-down menus for everything. I'm just very quickly to show you guys how it works. You click on deploy over here, 1, 2, whatever you want to deploy. And then you'll miss 3 and you click 4. You then, on the bottom tags, go to data cards, and look, data cards printed out for you. That's rows 1, 2, and 4, because we skipped 3. This is amazing. I have nothing to do with this. This is all user Missing One Leg. It's revolutionized my Kill Team life. Also, to quickly explain how these things work, if you don't want to watch the video and have me just talk through why I chose what I chose on each list, the names will be pretty self-explanatory. They're typically either 1/2 or elite/horde. I don't think that needs to be explained, but if you're building a list, number 1 will typically be if you're going up against elites. You want to take all of the number 1s. If you're going up against hordes, you take all the number 2s. I may have that the wrong way around, but basically, if there's a plasma gun in one of the numbered lists, that's to go against elites. If there's a flamer, that's to go against hordes. Anyway, enjoy the video. One day I am going to do this for 100 points level as well, but today is not that day. The reason I decided to do this is because I had made 4 lists for myself. You know, I really put a lot of effort into them. I think that was Drukhari, Admech, Astra Militarum, and Necrons. And so I was like, okay, well, I've done that. You know, that was fun. Oh, hey, you know what? I'll just go make another 14. Why not? If you have any questions about why I've put a specific thing into the list, please feel free to ask. Also, there are a lot of pretty damn good players that watch my channel. If those damn good players also wish to, use this tool and come up with their own lists and post that as an alternative, feel free, drop the links in the comments. And, hope maybe one day the comments in this video can actually act as a resource for anybody that wants 1 to 5 point lists, arena lists, 100-point lists, commander lists, who knows. Obviously, if you're the first person to watch this, there are no comments. So this seems super, grandiose, I realise, but it's going to get there. You've got to believe. Anyway, on with the video. Enjoy, and don't forget to buy your tickets for the LGT June 27th, 28th. It's going to be the biggest kill team tournament in the world. Adeptus Astartes. As we see here, I've decided a Scout Sergeant with a bolt gun is your leader in both lists. If you're going up against Elites, and Horde, I've gone with the Missile Launcher with the Camo Cloak on a Scout as your Sniper. Why have I done that? I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The Missile Launcher has both crack and frag profiles. It can do a lot of stuff. The Intercessor there has Auspex Comms. He's the guy that buffs the Scout, typically letting you hit on 2-3 rolling ones. I've given him a Stalker Bolt Rifle. My general feeling is that the Scout Gunner with the Missile Launcher and the Comms are typically your fire base. Everybody else swarms around, but those two typically stays safe. Don't move. There's also one Stern Guard veteran with a special issue bolt gun that is shared between the two lists. That's because, honestly, at 14 points, Strength 4 AP -2 gun is pretty good. All of this is pretty self-explanatory, but let's keep going. So a Stern Guard gunner with Grav Cannon and Grav Amp as your heavy for the anti-elites. Then 2 plasma gunners and a special issue bolt gun, a second of them, by the way. The Grav Cannon and Grav Amp, of course, giving you D3 damage against anything with a 3-up save, hence it being an elite's choice. And plasma guns, because they're great. Now, whether or not you overcharge plasma guns is very much up for debate. I would typically say don't, as neither of them are a sniper. But if you really need something dead, do as you will. Then, if you're going up against Hordes, you swap the 2 plasma guns for 2 flamers. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Flamers are great weapons. Don't forget their assault, so you can advance, and you'll probably be in range turn 1 to flame some charges there. Then you've got another Scout Gunner with a heavy bolter. I think, again, self-explanatory. And a Stern Guard veteran with a combi flamer. Really just cramming those flamers in there. Next up, we have the AdMech. Now, this is one of the lists that I actually did for myself before I decided to make this video. Because I think it's I think this is a solid list. We have a Vanguard Alpha with Phosphor Blast Pistol and Taser Goad. Now, I don't normally put a Taser Goad on my leader, but I had spare points, so I did. I go with a Phosphor Blast Pistol because it ignores cover. You've got to think, it's a 12-inch range on the pistol. Your leader is probably going to be hanging back, so anybody making moves to get to you will either be deep struck in, and they're going to be deep struck behind cover, most likely, because they will have the option to do that, or they'll be charging up the board, in which they're, in a typical board, they will have a lot of cover. You can, of course, feel free to use an arc pistol that is equally good. We then have 2 gunners with plasmas, and 2 regular guys, 1 ranger, 1 a vanguard, with omni specs. One of the 2 teams is a sniper and a comms. It's just a really solid fire base. Anything coming at you doesn't like plasma. It's just a safe bet, and specifically the sniper and comms team are lethal. You should be removing a model a turn with it. Now, this is going to be a bit of a controversial pick, but I like Fulgurite Priests. I think they're useful in a niche, much like all of the AdMech units, but their niche comes up in every game. If you can keep them alive until their niche is there, definitely worth 14 points. Then when you're against Hordes, you just go with 4 Corpuscari Priests, because they're really good. What can I say? Whereas if you are up against Elites, you swap the 4 Priests for 4 Plasma Calibers. Easy. Now, notably absent from that are any sort of infiltrators or rust stalkers. I like them purely to have 2 wounds to soak up psychics, but I haven't put them in because my plan there would just be to kill the enemy with plasma. It's not the most sophisticated plan, but it works really, really well. Next up, we have the Adeptus Sororitas. Now, these 2 lists are incredibly similar, so I'm going to read out everything shared by by both lists. You have a Sister Superior leading you with a Combi Flamer. You have Pious Vaughn in both lists, because why wouldn't you? You have a Sister Repentia as your combat. You have a Battle Sister with a Simulacrum Imperialis. You have 3 Arcoflagellants. Now, unlike most of my other lists here, the Adeptus Sororitas aren't brilliant when it comes to anti-elites. They have melters, but they don't have plasmas, and plasmas are the default. The problem with melters, of course, being the fact that you only get a single shot. That's pretty scary. However, what I've chosen to do here is against elites, go with 2 heavy bolters, one being a sniper, one being a demo. Whereas against Horde, 2 flamers, because flamers are great. One being a demo, one being a veteran. The veteran, and you're going to see this in almost all of my lists, I like to make a flamer a veteran. Turn 1, speed them up the board. Now for Astra Militarum, this was another list that I made for myself. Let's see. So the core of your list is Gottfried de Montbard and Pious Vaughn. They're in both lists. Everything else is completely different though. If you're up against elites, 3 Scion Gunners. Now the intention here is that you will drop your Scion. I've given them melter guns because I'm being a bit funky. I would recommend you go plasma guns instead. I'm being weird though. That's me. Ignore me. If you're against Hordes, you swap those 3 Scions with melters, or plasmas, for 3 Scions with flamers. Let me tell you, there is nothing worse than hot dropping 3 Scions after the movement phase, so you can't be charged within 8 inches of any enemy models. And also, brilliant way to get a death from afar secondary objective on any mission that has it. Then we've got the Gottfried de Montbard Pious Vaughn, and then there's nothing fancy here, guys. It's exactly what you'd expect. You then fill out the rest of your list if you're against elites with plasmas, but if you're against Hordes, you swap those plasmas for flamers because they are exactly the same points. I have also, for fun, managed to fit a Guardsman with Voxcaster into both lists, and he's a comms in both lists. You're going to need that, trust me. You may also note on this particular list that I have a Sergeant with exactly the same loadout twice on the list. Now, why have I done that? That's because with this list, I feel it benefits quite heavily from the Flamers and the Plasma guys being from different subfactions. So that means you have to duplicate the list completely. But of course, as I said at the start, which subfactions those are, I'm going to leave up to you. Next up, we've got the Asuryani. Now, this is a team that a lot of people struggle against. By which I mean, they struggle to realize why they're so good. Take this list, and you'll soon see. This list is essentially one list. The only swap we make is if you're up against Hordes, you take 2 Storm Guardian Gunners with Flamers, but if you're up against Elites, you take 2 Storm Guardian Gunners with Fusion Guns. To answer a question some of you may have, why don't we also swap out the heavy weapon platform? I'm taking a Star Cannon in both of my lists, both of my iterations. Why not take a Scatter Laser, for example? And the simple answer is, the Star Cannon has the D3 damage. I would rather kill one thing for sure than 2 or 3 things possibly. A reliable kill is a good kill. Apart from that, you take Guardian Defender as your leader, followed by a Guardian Defender as comms. The intention with those 2 is to keep them as close to the heavy weapon platform as possible. They are the ones operating it, and of course your leader's just hanging back so he doesn't die. We then have the Dire Avenger Exarch. Now, the Dire Avenger Exarch is an amazing model. I think it's something ridiculous, like point for point it's the best model in the game for just raw killing power. Something nuts. It's only 11 points. The key here for new players is with the Avenger Shuriken catapults, you have 2 of them. So just like with Tau drones, you want to roll those dice individually. The 2 guns individually, sorry, not each individual dice. The reason for that is that potentially you can get 2 injury rolls on the same model with that one model very strong. Now I've made that one a veteran. The intention is you use the veteran move to get them super close. It's a very threatening model. It's going to draw a lot of fire. And you know, if it dies turn 1, that sucks, but it means they haven't been shooting the rest of your army. Howling Banshee Exarch, Shuriken Pistol, Executioner, Zealot. So the Executioner only takes it up to a strength 4, which is, you know, great against guard, but you're really looking to get strength 5 so that you can be wounding on 3s with against Marines. Hence the Zealot, and of course the Howling Banshee. Oh, it's a horrifying model. But if you don't know, the reason it's a must-take in every Eldar list is because when you charge something, they cannot react. That means not only can they not fire Overwatch, but they also cannot retreat. Then we get to the swap outs we can make. And then I've gotten super spammy, and there's just 6 Guardian Defenders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 6 Guardian Defenders. And 1 Dire Avenger, because I had the points, so why not chuck in a Dire Avenger? This list, if you run it, it might not seem that killer. You may have just read the Guardian Defender stats and thought, well, But I assure you, this is a tournament-winning list, horrifying as that may sound. We then come to Servants of the Abyss, and this is the first list that I've only done a single list for. I haven't done 2. That's because the Servants of the Abyss, they don't have any sub-factions to worry about, so you don't need 2 lists for that. And they also don't have the greatest choice, I'm going to say. Well, we've got a Traitor Sergeant as your leader. We've got 2 Guardsmen, Gunners with Flamers, one being a demo, one being a veteran. Demo because it means that you're wounding pretty much everything apart from Death Guard on 3s instead of 4s. Really good. Rogue Psyker because you know what? If you're playing this team, you want that Psychic. And then we go to the max on Negavolt Cultists, 4 of them. There's also 2 Chaos Beastmen in there. Now you may want to consider maxing Chaos Beastmen instead of what I've done. It's very valid. But I decided that I wanted a little bit more firepower to cover the Negavolts and the Beastmen whilst they're charging up the board. So I've gone with 2 Cultist of the Abyss Gunners with grenade launchers, a Black Legionnaire. Why have I put a Black Legionnaire in there? It's a good question. It's because the Black Legionnaire allows anyone within 6 inches to reroll their failed nerve test. And then 1 final Cultist of the Abyss just to round out points. Again, Demons, only a single list. So we have a Plague Ridden as the leader. We have an Iridescent Horror as a demo. Now, I'm just going to point out, I went with an Iridescent Horror because I had points to spare. You don't need an Iridescent Horror, it could be a regular Pink Horror. I then have a Pink Horror with Icon Bearer, who is Comms. Now, the Icon Bearer, for those of you unaware, its icon allows you, in the Psychic phase, to pick the closest enemy model, doesn't have to be in line of sight, and on the roll of a 6, you inflict a mortal wound. It's worth a punt. And then I've gone with another Pink Horror, so that's 3 Pink Horrors. I would generally say run these 3 guys as far up the board as possible, and just let them get killed on an objective. That's what they're there for. We then have a Blood Reaper as a combat. Now, I've gone with a Blood Reaper as a combat because, bizarrely, the Bloodletters, although being very powerful in melee, don't actually have many attacks. So we want to give the Blood Reaper, who is the Sergeant model of the Bloodletters, just that little bit of an edge. So it's now got 3 attacks. The AP -3 is amazing, obviously. And you're hoping to roll a 6, so you're doing 2 damage. We then go with a Plague Bearer Icon Bearer. And you may ask why. That's an odd choice. He's there to sit in the back with his disgusting resilience to hopefully just sit on an objective. Nobody else, I believe, has done that in their demon list, so feel free to just swap him out for another Bloodletter or a Demonette. We then have 3 Bloodletters, just regular dudes. We have a Bloodletter Icon Bearer and a Bloodletter Hornblower. Those are giving all of your bloodletters a reroll on the charge and a +1 to the charge. You're making charges, basically. We then have another bloodletter, and finally an Allures. Again, the Allures is only in there because I felt like mixing it up and not putting in another bloodletter. Feel free to swap her out if you don't feel that the Allures does anything for you. I think in this case the Allures can be a bit of a bait. Allow the enemy to get a charge on it, so you can then countercharge with others, but your Allures is still going to be able to attack, not counterattack, but attack in the Hammer of Wrath phase as if she charged. Next up, we have the Death Guard. 2 lists here. One I did as a bit of fun that I don't think I'd use typically, but you never know what the LGT pack might call for. The more standard list that I would run is a Plague Champion with Plague Sword Plasma Gun. That's your leader. A Plague Marine Gunner with a Plague Spewer as a veteran. Now again, the Plague Spewer is just a flamer. Use that veteran move to run it up as fast as you can, but it's a heavy. Don't forget that. So you can advance with your veteran move. Your movement essentially resets, so you can still then move and be able to shoot in the next movement and shooting phase, because the veteran move happens before the game actually begins, or before the movement phase actually starts. We then have a Flail of Corruption. Now I haven't made this guy a combat or a zealot, because honestly, the Flail of Corruption kills stuff and doesn't need help. We then have a Plague Marine with Icon of Despair, who is a combat. So this guy is a combat because he has the Icon of Despair. The Icon of Despair, for those of you that don't know, is a -1 to the leadership of any enemy models within, I believe, 6 inches. Have to double check it, but pretty close by. So I've made him a combat almost to remind myself that you want him to be close to the enemy. We then have 11 Poxwalkers. I would recommend keeping them in 2 clumps of 4 and 1 clump of 3. Sit them on objectives, zone the enemy out of those objectives, and just let them sit there. Yes, they're going to die eventually, but hopefully you're going to make some disgusting resilience and you will have enough points before you break. And honestly, that's a really solid Death Guard list. However, an alternative is to drop one of your Plague Spewers and 8 Poxwalkers for 1 Blightlord Champion. Now I've given him a Combi Flamer and a Bubotic Axe, and I've made him a Demolitions. The reason for that is that you want to hot drop him into the enemy lines. As soon as he drops, you essentially have a bolter and a flamer right there doing damage as soon as you land. Don't forget that these are the most durable Terminators in the game, ignoring Custodes, because you have a 4-up invuln and a 5-up disgustingly resilient. They should survive to the next round to get a charge off. Next up we have Death Watch. I've done these into 2 different lists. Instead of doing my standard Hordes and Elites list, I've done long range and short range lists. Well, I've almost done them. Let's get into it. So, in both cases, you have a Watch Sergeant with a Stalker Pattern Bolt Gun as your leader. Then, again, for both lists, you have 2 Frag Cannons. They're not anything special, they're just Frag Cannons. In your regular list, against everyone apart from Plasma Spam, you want to run a Deathwatch Veteran Gunner with Infernus Heavy Bolter as a sniper, an Intercessor with Bolt Rifle, Auspex Comms. You keep him next to your Infernus Heavy Bolter for good shenanigans. And then 2 Deathwatch Veterans with Bolt Guns, one of them is Demolitions. That's your regular list. If you are up against anyone that can bring a hard counter to you in the form of Plasma, you want to swap out the Veteran Gunner with Infernus Heavy Bolter, the Intercessor, and the 2 Deathwatch Veterans with a Black Shield as a Veteran, a Deathwatch Veteran as a Zealot, and a Deathwatch Veteran as a Combat. All of them are going to have a Storm Shield and Power Maul. The reason for that is that you're going to get shot with Plasma and you need a 3-up invuln, because my gosh, otherwise you're dead. And there's just nothing you can do. The 3-up invuln is absolutely key, because if you're having to make 6-up saves on your guys, you're going to die. You won't make it, basically. You're going to have all 3 of those guys charge into the enemy, get into the lines. whilst the 2 veteran gunners and the watch sergeant hang back, stay on your objectives. Okay, so Drukhari, again, this is one of the lists that I actually made for myself. I've played it a few times. There are 3 lists on here. All 3 of the lists use a Night Fiend as a leader and a Clavex as a veteran. Now, some people like to put the Clavex as a combat or a zealot. Fine, do what you want to do. I like veteran moves. What can I say? I think that making a veteran move in the right time, once you know how to use the veteran move, is one of the best tactics in the game. Then the standard list here is all mandrakes. 8 mandrakes. Mandrakes, for those of you that don't know, are actually pretty solid in both shooting and combat. And their pièce de résistance, of course, is they have a 5-up invuln save. Plus, don't forget their 6-up feel no pain from Power from Pain. And they are also always at a -1 to hit, including in close combat. The point of this list is to just deny your enemy hits. They've done pretty well against Marines for me. Obviously, they are quite hard countered by Flamers, so watch out for Flamers. Then, if you want to run Racks. Obviously, you'd be taking these guys as prophets of flesh. You wouldn't run Racks as anything else. You take an Akathist with Electro-Corrosive Whip and Liquefire Gun as a combat. You take 2 Rack Gunners, both with Liquefire guns, one being at Demolitions. And then just as many Racks as you can fit in the list, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There you go. However, feel free to drop 4 Racks to put a Grotesque in there if you think that sounds like more fun, or for some reason there's a mission where you want a Grotesque. Now over to Genestealer Cults. This is a bit of a messy looking list because instead of calling them 1 and 2, I've called them Elite and Swarm. But again, I think it's pretty obvious what's what. You take the models that have Elite as their name against Elite armies, and you take the models that have a Swarm next to their name against the Swarm armies. So in the Elite and Swarm, kind of the core, you have a Neophyte leader with a bolt pistol power maul. You have an Acolyte fighter with an auto pistol, heavy rock cutter, combat. Rock weapons are always good. You have an Acolyte hybrid with a hand flamer. They're going to come up more. You have a Neophyte gunner with flamer as a demo. Honestly, the flamer is brilliant. You then have another Neophyte gunner with flamer. And then you have a Genestealer with Acid Maw as a veteran. So that's the core of your list. So you always have the double flamer. And you always have a rock cutter. Outside of that, if you're up against elites, you are adding to the army another Acolyte hybrid with hand flamer. And then you're taking 2 Neophyte gunners with mining lasers. You're taking 2 Aberrants with power hammers. And that's it. Now that's a pretty small list. However, you're going to get some work done. Let's be honest. If your Aberrants manage to close and get into combat, you will just tear through their lines. But then if you're up against a Swarm list, you basically swap out all those big guys for as many Metamorph or Acolyte models as you can, and you give them all hand flamers. Now, don't forget that hand flamers are pistols, not assault, which is something that caught me out. So if you advance, you can't shoot with them. So they're not as instantly fast as they may seem. We're adding a Metamorph leader with a hand flamer, Rendeglaw Metamorph Whip, a Neophyte gunner with a seismic cannon, Neophyte gunner with a heavy stubber. Again, those are the things that kill the small guys. Makes sense. An Acolyte leader with a hand flamer. Then 2 hybrid Metamorphs, hand flamers, Metamorph whips. The intention with the whips is you get in there and you know what? Your guys tend to die. This way, you still get to make attacks. And hybrid Metamorphs, when they get to attack, kill things. Especially horde things. Trust me. We then also add in 2 Neophyte hybrids with shotguns. Because objectives. Now for the Grey Knights, I've only made a single list because that's the way it goes, I suppose. Justicar with a pair of Nemesis Falchions as your leader. A Grey Knight Gunner with a Silencer as a demo. A Grey Knight with a Nemesis Demon Hammer as combat. A Grey Knight Gunner with Incinerator as a veteran. If you've seen my other factions, you'll know that I like to have a Flamer as a veteran. Veteran move really strong with a Flamer. And then just 2 Grey Knights with a pair of Nemesis Falchions. You will notice I don't have a Terminator on this list. The reason for that is, to be honest, the extra body is just so much better. We then go over to Harlequins. Now again, don't forget, you can get quite in-depth when it comes to Harlequin lists, but I've just given a single one as a guideline. Your leader will have a Shuriken pistol and a Harlequin's embrace. The next 3 will have fusion pistols, 2 with Harlequin's kiss, 1 with Harlequin's caress. The next 3 will have neurodisruptors, all with Harlequin's kiss, one of which will be as combat, one of which will be as zealot. Now we have made one of the players with a fusion pistol a veteran. Veteran moves, you run up there, you hope that you get to make a shot with the pistol. On to Necrons now. We have 2 lists here, one of which I managed to take to the win in Bad Moon, and that's my exact list. And then another list that I could have used but never did in that particular tournament. I would only use the first list I'm going to read out here with Necron Warriors against a very specific matchup, specifically elites. And you'll take them as the dynasty that gives them an extra -1 when shooting within half range. So you want to take a Necron leader a Necron warrior as a leader, and then a Necron warrior as a comms, and then another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Necron warriors. You will also then take 2 Lich Guard with war scythes, 1 being a combat, 1 being a zealot. I think it's pretty obvious what's happening here. Your Necron warriors stand at the back of the board, get their shooting done, whilst your Lich Guard are what your enemy has to focus on, because otherwise they're screwed. And then the list that I won Bad Moon with, came second / joint first, whatever. Bad Moon with is 2 Immortals, 1 being a leader, 1 being a comms. So the leader can either be a Tesla or a Gorse. The comms is always a Tesla. Then you take 7 flayed ones, 1 of which is a zealot, and then you take 1 Lich Guard with a war scythe who is a combat. Honestly, those flayed ones get work done. It's horrifying. And with this list, you will take, what are you going to take? You're going to take the dynasty that allows you to reroll all failed misses. Lethal, I assure you. Now, this is a beginner Orks list. It's going to be a bit of an odd one. This is coming post-annual, where choppers now cost 1 point. So I wanted to reflect that a little bit. So we're still doing a Gretchen as a leader. That is questionable. That really depends on the pack you're going to play. You need to be able to hide your leader very, very well. And if you can't, you probably want to take him as something else. Something more survivable. But that's for another time. We then take a Boss Knob with a Combi Scorcher and a Big Chopper as a demo. Why not? That's just good stuff. 2 Orc Boy Gunners with big shooters. 2 Commandos, who, yes, are now 9 points. It's factored in, don't worry. A Commando Boss Knob with a Power Claw. And then an Elite Boss Knob with a Power Claw and Slugger at the end there. And this is where I've deviated somewhat. I'm taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Shooter Boys. 6 Shooter Boys, not something you would see in a list before now. And arguably, if you really wanted, you could probably drop the Elite Boss Knob and just put more Shooter Boys in. That might actually be the way to go. I also haven't listed the other 2 specialisms. And you know what? You do you. Have fun. Try and figure that out yourself. It's not too difficult, I assure you. It's combat and zealot on whichever model you want. Now we get on to the Elucidian Starstriders. The Elucidian Starstriders, for those of you that don't know, basically have a set 100 point list that you can't deviate from. I've put that up here. I have then also, with the gap between them to delineate that they are kind of optional, put another 4 Voidsmen into the list. The reason for this, officially by GW standards, you cannot take more than 100 points in a competitive game with the Elucidian Starstriders. However, the Kill Team Stream FAQ, and I think everyone kind of agrees, says that, you know what, if you want to play Elucidian Starstriders above 100 points, you could just keep adding regular Voidsmen until you hit 125, which means 4 Voidsmen. So they are in there as well. There's not much to say about these guys, because that's the only list you can run. Okay, now for Gellerpox, I've thrown this list together, but there are honestly actually quite a few ways you can choose to run Gellerpox. So we've got a Gellerpox mutant as leader, which I apparently forgot to actually put the leader specialism in there. Fixed. We then have 2 Gellerpox mutants, one as Zealot, one as Combat, and then a Nightmare Hulk as nothing, and a Nasher Screamer as a veteran. The reason the Nasher Screamer is a veteran is because you want him to be in combat as soon as you can, but they only have a 4-inch move, I think. They're super slow. You need to spend that veteran move at the beginning and advance, and just hope you get a good advance roll. If you're playing on the long border, on the short board edges, so that you have a long way to go, possibly consider dropping a Nasher Screamer and spamming other small grubs, I would say. Then 4 Eye Stinger Swarms, because I think they have 10-inch move, which is really good. And then -1 to hit. 2 Glitchlings, who are there to sit back on your objectives, because they have Disgusting Resilient. And 2 Curse Mites, because 8-inch move is nice as well. Here we have the absolute basic Tau competitive list. You have a Shasui Fire Warrior with what he has, Pulse Rifle, as a leader. You have 3 Rail Rifles, one as a demo, one as a sniper, one as a comms. You have a Recon Drone, you have a Grav Inhibitor Drone, and then you can mix the rest up as you want of drones. I've gone 2 Shield Drones, and then the rest are, how many is it? 7 Gun Drones. But you know what? Feel free to drop those Shield Drones to go with more Gun Drones. Your choice. This is a very strong list. If you are trying to be kind to people and you want them to, kind of not hate you, then consider dropping some of the drones until you have an equal balance of regular Fire Warriors and drones. That will make it a little bit easier on the enemy. Now at 125 points, Kroot really only have one list, which is a Kroot Carnivore as a leader, 4 Kroot Hounds, 11 Kroot Carnivores, and then a Krootox Rider. The only option I've put in here is the Krootox Rider. Either take him as heavy or combat, depending on how you want to run him. Don't forget, the issue with Kroot is their leadership, so keep them packed up, okay? They are going to need bonuses to their leadership for when they eventually have to take a nerve test. Now the 1,000 Suns. I've done 2 lists here, one of which is a kind of a Rubric Marine list, one of which is a Terminator list. There is a third option, which is to ignore the Rubric Marines and just go Zangors. That is probably the best option, but I haven't listed it because it's pretty obvious. So, on the Rubric Marine list, you have a Twist Ray with an Auto Pistol and Chainsword as your leader. Now, I give him the Auto Pistol because really you want him at the back of the board. You don't want him anywhere scary, and he's going to be sat on an objective, so even if an enemy does get close to him, you probably don't want to charge it. Both lists, we've got a Zangor Brayhorn with Zangor Blades. We've got an Aspiring Sorcerer with a Warp Flame Pistol as combat. A Rubric Marine with a Warp Flamer and an Icon of Flame as a veteran. Again, the Icon of Flame is just kind of if it goes off, that's pretty cool. But you're not relying on it, but it's there. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 Zangors, all with Zangor Blades as your regular. That's your core list there. In the Rubric Marine, you add another Rubric Marine with Warp Flamer, make him a demo, and a Rubric Marine Gunner with Soul Reaper Cannon. Now, I haven't made him anything because the specialisms have already gone elsewhere. However, if you are running the Terminator, you drop your Twist Ray leader for a Scarab Occult Sorcerer, obviously, with an Inferno Combi Bolter, make him your leader. I'm going to be honest, that's mainly to save points so that you can get an extra Zangor in there. And then, you add another Zangor in as a Zealot. 2 Psychics a turn. You're going to take that one against elite armies, basically. And finally, my gosh, this is going to take me ages to edit. We have Tyranids. Now, Tyranids are possibly the most diverse faction outside of, so I was going to say outside of Adeptus Astartes, but I think Adeptus Astartes has a lot of units that are traps, almost. Whereas Tyranids have a lot of units that are just good, in different ways. So I've only done 2 lists. One of which is the very kind of standard Hormigant Swarm list. But I didn't want to go crazy. And then on one of them, you're swapping out the Hormigant spam for some big Raveners. So the Hormigant spam list is a Tyranid Warrior Gunner. So both lists start with a core of big bugs, which is a Tyranid Warrior Gunner with Bone Swords, Venom Cannon, Flesh Hooks. He's your leader. Next, a Tyranid Warrior with Bone Swords, Devourer because it's cheap, and Flesh Hooks as comms. Obviously you keep those two back, and you kind of try to keep the comms within 6 of the Gunner, your leader. Then you have a Lictor as a Veteran, again, loving the Veteran move, trust me. And I decided to throw a Genestealer in as a combat, because why not? And then on the Hormigant spam list, you just throw in 11 Hormigants. That was easy. However, if you don't want to spam Hormigants, drop the 11 Hormigants and put in 3 Raveners with Scything Talons. And that's it. A nice, easy list.